Hello, this message is from Mr. John Durgan. My name is I'm a junior calling from Villanova University. I want to share a reminder that Friday, May 31st is the end of Villanova's fiscal year, and we're counting on your support.
So by now I know that whenever I get a call from a 610 area code, it is likely my alma mater calling to ask me for money. And as I've gotten older, I've wondered why, after all of the money that I already paid to attend, the school still calls to ask me for donations. And I know I'm not alone.
So roughly speaking, I gave my college about $120,000, okay? So you might say that I already gave them $120,000, and now you have the audacity to ask me for more money?
So here's what I want to figure out. What are the actual costs of going to college today? What do colleges do with all the money they already have? And why do they keep calling to ask us for donations? So I decided to go right to the source, and where better than my own alma mater.
Ignite change. Go Nova.
I spoke with Heather Potts, the Associate Vice President of Development for Villanova University.
Why does Villanova University ask alums for donations?
Because we need them. The reality is tuition, room and board make up a big chunk of a university or college's operating budget, but it doesn't cover all of the cost.
Okay, let's just stop there for a second. I know what you're thinking. How does tuition not cover all of the costs for a major university? Tuition's like $1 gazillion and counting. Actually, how much is tuition these days? U.S. News and World Report looked at colleges over the last 20 years and found, tuition's kind of out of control right now. The average tuition and fees for private universities has jumped 144%. And for public universities, out-of-state tuition and fees rose 171%. And believe it or not, the highest growth has actually impacted in-state public colleges, a 211% increase in tuition and fees for those schools. By the way, what are fees? What are other school-related fees? U.S. News also wrote all about the surprising fees you may have to pay if you go to college today. Lab fees, tech fees, campus fees, freshman fees, orientation fees. This one can't be real. Every year at the University of California, Irvine, students pay a campus spirit fee of $99. The fee is required of all undergraduate students and is used to support athletic and campus spirit programs, according to the school's website. So yes, tuition is high. You get charged for things like campus spirit fees, but it's still not enough.
The reality is the cost of tuition actually doesn't cover the entire cost to educate a student. And I know that's really hard when we say something like that out loud because the cost of tuition is so expensive. When you think about a college or university, it's basically like running a small city. We have a police force. We have an on-campus infirmary. You have dining halls. You have to keep the students, safe. So it's a lot beyond just that in-classroom experience with faculty. So all of that has to be paid for somehow.
Most colleges and universities are nonprofit corporations. They have tax-exempt 501c3 status. And that means they can charge money for tuition, room, board, campus spirit fees. But because the operating costs of running essentially a small city are so expensive, schools aren't really making money from those things. But they can ask for tax-deductible donations. All right, we'll get back to tuition and fees in just a bit. But this is mostly a story about donations once we graduate. By the way, where do my donation dollars even go?
What a lot of our philanthropic dollars do is really enhance the student experience. So a portion of that money is certainly going to bring to life the strategic plan for the university. So some of that could be going to capital projects. Some of it could be going to financial aid and scholarships to help students.
There are 4 types of financial aid. Grants, usually from the federal government, and scholarships. That's money that students do not have to pay back. Then there's work study, which is how I got through college by working on campus for 4 years. And finally, student loans. And as high as tuition is, and as much as I know you can't stand any of those donation calls, this system is working for a lot of people who need it. The New York Times writes, at private, nonprofit 4-year colleges, 89% of students receive some form of financial aid, meaning that almost no one is paying full price. I spoke with Dr. Jonathan Meir, an economist at Texas A&M. He told me, while list tuition or sticker price has gone up significantly over the last few decades, net tuition after discounts has not. Indeed, it's cheaper for low and even middle-income students to attend the richest schools than it is to go to community college. For example, at Harvard, if your family's total income is $75,000 or less, you don't contribute anything for your education. So that's one place where some of your donations go. Then there's capital projects. So schools take some donations and they build big, new, cool things on campus. But they also fund those big, new, cool things on campus by borrowing loads of money for one key reason. Residence halls generate revenue. As economist Richard Fetter wrote for Forbes in 2018, universities are hungry for revenues these days, and by forcing students to pay above market rates for housing that is generally less appealing for them, they can augment revenues without formally raising tuition fees. It is a stealth, less transparent way of raising student costs of college attendance. And schools are kind of in this weird arms race to flex and build big, new, cool things on campus, bigger, newer, and cooler than the school the next town over. Just take a look at what is happening right now with private colleges in New Jersey. Stevens Institute of Technology in Hoboken just built 2 new residential towers with views of Manhattan. Felician University in Rutherford just built a new state-of-the-art fitness center. Seton Hall in South Orange borrowed more than $110 million to renovate the student center and an old residence hall. And St. Peter's in Jersey City built a new residence hall and a newly remodeled basketball arena made possible by a $5 million donation. That is quite the mustache. As one Moody's director said, if you're not offering the most up-to-date facilities or you're not innovating in terms of programs, then students are going to look elsewhere. My freshman year of college, I lived next to an enormous and not very glamorous parking lot. But now, a few years since I graduated, that same parking lot is suddenly a massive complex of apartments, classrooms, fitness centers, a restaurant, and a coffee bar. I have seen it, and it is awesome.
Now you actually, you're not just driving by campus, you're driving through campus, and you really can feel that.
In certain years, graduates feel really generous. Surprisingly coincides with a stronger economy. The fiscal year 2021 saw voluntary giving to U.S. colleges and universities rise almost 7%. At the same time, the U.S. stock market ended 2020 at all-time highs, followed then by double-digit percentage gains in the NASDAQ, the Dow, and the S&P 500 in the first 6 months of 2021. The era of Wall Street's easy money meant a boost for university donations, even if it came in a time when schools had to operate under COVID precautions. But is this whole system sustainable? Remember I said that we would revisit tuition. We're in a bit of a vicious cycle right now. People want to go to school, but tuition is high, so they take out loans. The operating costs at these schools are super high because they're mini cities in competition with one another, so schools raise tuition and they ask for donations from people who want to go to school, but since tuition is so high, they take out more loans. You get the picture. There are lots of reasons to help us better understand why tuition remains so stubbornly high. First, demand. This is a look at the percentage of Americans with a college degree or higher over the last 60 years. And there's another big culprit to help us understand why colleges are so expensive. According to budget and policy priorities, state funding for public 2- and 4-year colleges plummeted between the years 2008 and 2018. In the most difficult years after the 2008 recession, colleges responded to significant funding cuts by increasing tuition, reducing faculty, limiting course offerings, and in some cases, closing campuses. In other words, if the state government is giving these schools less money, the schools have to raise tuition. And right now at the state level, it's kind of a mixed bag. Lots of states are trying to increase funding for schools, while in Hawaii, legislators last year agreed to cut the funding for the 10-campus University of Hawaii system by nearly 9%, including nearly 14% for the Manoa campus alone. And in case this entire story weren't already complicated enough, schools are also being punished because of politics. Last year, Idaho slashed university budgets by $2.5 million specifically to eliminate spending on diversity, equity, and social justice programming. In other words, prove to us that you're not teaching critical race theory and you can have your money back. All this to say, you've probably noticed things are not exactly the smoothest, economically speaking, these days. And a general feeling of economic uncertainty will reduce giving to colleges and universities. After all, charitable giving is the most discretionary form of spending we have. I asked Heather Potts what a potential recession means for the near future of university donations.
There are some of our donors and potential donors that even with a recession will still be able to make multi-million-dollar gifts to the institution. A lot of times people who are making a gift of say $1,000, $2,000, they might be overall income could be significantly less than someone who's giving us $1 million gift. And they're rethinking, with gas prices, with the increased cost of food, giving $1,000 or $2,000 to my alma mater might not be a priority right now because I want to make sure that I can care for my family.
So whether you give any money to your school or your attitude is more aligned with,
In their letter, they were like, hey, it's been a while since you've given us money. I was like, hey, it's been a while since you've housed and taught me.
those calls for donations will continue, even if the cost of colleges is not going down anytime soon. Look, as maddening as this entire system of higher education is in this country, the expenses, the fees, the hoops you have to jump through, the unfair system of debt and how easily it gets accrued, I got to admit to you, I'm not impervious to these sales tactics. I was an English major in college.
Yes, you heard me, an English major. I paid $120,000. How dare you clap? How dare you clap for the worst financial decision I ever made in my life? I paid $120,000 for someone to tell me to go read Jane Austen, and then I didn't.
And from time to time, I've given money to my alma mater for things like the English department. And my school knows it. In fact, when I wrote to Villanova to work on this story, a representative promptly emailed me back thanking me for my recent donation to the men's hockey team that I used to play for. At the end of the day, asking alums, young alums in particular, to donate comes down to trying to tap into passions that recent graduates may have for their schools, especially while those feelings and memories are fresh. Charitable giving is habit forming, at least schools hope it is. And it goes to everything, like fancy new buildings on campus and the operating costs to run a small city. And that is the reason that schools call and call and call.